Okay, I think we're going to start. Thank you everyone for being here. Good evening. We are very, very pleased to organize this talk with artists Roger Ballen and Andrew Luk. Thank you. Thank you. My name is Vanessa Franklin. I'm the co-founder of the gallery Boogie Woogie Photography. We are opening our new exhibition ZODIAC tomorrow, Saturday, here at the Loft in Wangshu. It will be until the 7th of May and it is by appointment only. This exhibition showcases 12 of Roger Ballen's photographs in black and white or color. Each animal of the Chinese zodiac is represented. For the first time, the photographic work of Roger Ballen is seen together with the sculptures and installation of Andrew Luk. The moderation this evening will be led in conjunction with friend and art lover Damian Chandler, who is a fan of Roger and Andrew. If you have any questions during this talk, please feel free to use the chat box. We'll keep 10 minutes at the end to answer some of your questions. Fun fact, Roger's Chinese zodiac is a tiger and Andrew Luk is a rabbit, and I'm a dragon. First, I will briefly introduce Roger and Andrew, and then we'll start our conversation. About Roger Ballen. Roger Ballen is one of the most important photographers of his generation. He was born in 1950 in New York, but works and lives in Johannesburg, South Africa. He has published more than 25 books. The most recent ones are Roger the Rat and Ballenesque, which was republished this year by Them and Hudson in paperback. His works is collected by many leading international art museums. I counted 80, I think, on your website, Roger. His practice integrates photography, video installations, sculptures, and drawings. His video of the music group Dion Truths reached over 125 million views on YouTube. I can try to refresh your memory. I think you're freaky and I like you a lot. So I think now you know what I'm talking about. Roger also collaborated in Japan with fashion brand Comme des Garçons. I remember that amazing Perfecto white jacket in leather with his photograph on the back. Ballen is one of the artists representing South Africa at the Venice Biennale this year from April to November with his series The Theatre of Apparitions, which will be displayed on light boxes. Roger defines himself as a psychological artist. For me, he's a poet and a visionary. Now, Andrew. Andrew Luk is a Hong Kong-based artist. He's born in the US also, but in 1988. He's a millennial. He just realized. His works, he works with a very large range of media. I will give you some example. In his work, you can find 3D printing, cement, polystyrene foam, concrete, artificial fur, silicon carbide, paint thinner, stainless steel, steel wire, UV resin, nylon, and even homemade napalm, and much more. Maybe some of you in Hong Kong remember his fabulous piece, Haunted Salvage, his notorious large-scale installation suspended in Art Basel 2 years ago. Sorry, I cannot sing it. His practice excavates the binary relationship and dichotomy between culture and nature, spiritual and secular, belief and fact, man-made and organic. He also has a BA in European history. His works are in the collection of the Smart Museum of Art, Chicago, United States, and the K11 Art Foundation in Hong Kong. I think we can consider Andrew as a conceptual artist. Now we've decided to show you for 2 minutes a teaser that I'm going to share screen with you. And then I lead Damian. Okay, so go.
Each animal on the planet has its own archetypal value, and those values are brought into being when humans interact with them. An animal is truth, a reflection of purity. I am intrigued by animal psychology. Put metaphorically, the animal is the id. If you want to try to understand the deeper parts of human behavior, sometimes a good place to start is with the animal. Each species of animal brings with its own mythology. And when you bring that mythology into a photograph, it offers unlimited possibilities for creating deeper meanings relevant to the human condition. The use of animals in the Chinese zodiac is part of an ancient practice of animism that is incorporated with religion, philosophy, astrology, and numerology into a cohesive cultural cosmology. This tradition led me to consider other cultural cosmologies throughout history to understand how different people groups build specific systems of orientation, diluting borders between spiritual and secular, belief and fact, man-made and organic.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you'll come tomorrow and the day after and take appointment to visit for real. Before I let Damian lead the conversation, let's ask general question to both of you, Roger, and after maybe Andrew. I always wanted to ask you this question, and I never did, so I take the opportunity. Where does it all begin, and why? Why did you become an artist, Roger? Why?
Well, the photography began in the late 60s. My mother worked in Magnum in New York and started one of the first photo galleries in America with Cortez, Cartier-Bresson, Marc Reboux, all these famous people. So during my youth, 15, 16, 17, something like this, I met these people. They weren't that interested in me, but they left books and photos and whatever around the house. So when I graduated from high school in 1968, my mother and father gave me a camera, and I immediately could take good pictures because I had seen great pictures for God knows how many years. So I was ready to, I had the eye, I had the inclination, I had the passion from about 68 till now. So that's how it all started. So in those days, I considered myself a photographer. The photographer didn't consider themselves an artist. There wasn't any correlation between the two. Beginning in about 96, 97, my approach towards photography changed. I started to work with the people in a more so-called theatrical, interactive way, and I started to create what people now refer to as sort of a Ballen-esque aesthetic. And so somewhere around 97, 98, I started thinking of myself as a photographer artist. And now I would say the same. I'm a photographer artist. That's what I would call myself.
Thank you. Andrew, would you like to answer the same question?
Yeah, I think it started around high school, where you start looking at your classes and you start looking at what you're good at, and you're considering what you might want to achieve for the rest, like as a profession, or even when you approach college. And I realized very quickly that I would probably not do professional sports. I was horrible at music, and art just seemed like something that I would, at least whatever effort I put in, I would get results from. And it felt like it was always a 1-for-1, that like if I gave it a good effort, I would get good results. And I appreciated that, and I enjoyed that it was hard work, and I decided to just go with it. At the time, like growing up in Hong Kong, I think, I graduated in high school in like 2006. There wasn't really much to go with in terms of like seeing art, or I didn't know anybody that was an artist. I didn't really, like locally, I didn't have any interaction with anybody that was really creative. So it was like I knew that I enjoyed this, and I knew some other people in the world somehow made a living off of it. So I just kind of signed up for art school and hoped for the best. And yeah, so far so good.
Thank you, Andrew. Damian, I'll let you kickstart the conversation with your question.
Yeah, thank you, Vanessa, and hello to our audience. I'm sure there's thousands of people joining us from South Africa and further afield as well. Now, I'm very fortunate to know both artists. Roger and I have actually known each other for a decade now. We met in Johannesburg when I was working for a mutual friend of ours who owned the Joburg Art Fair, and that's the first time I saw his work. Andrew and we've known each other for less time, but I did visit your studio. I looked it up today. It was in 2008. It feels like a long time ago, but that experience really stuck with me, and it's really been great to continue the discussions we've been having. But I'd love to start with Roger, and like I say, I think back to when you were last here in Hong Kong, the last time you were actually in the city, and that was October 2017 when we launched your retrospective book, and we had a really great conversation at Duddles to celebrate that. While you were here, we were walking around Hong Kong, and we headed to some of the thrift shops and antique shops in Central. And I remember you coming across an item, which I won't go into details what the item was, but I remember you picking up and saying, this could work. And that item, I was thinking, is that going to end up being in one of the photographs? And obviously within your photography, there's often a use of images and a use of items. And I'd love to know the selection process of those items. Is it instinctive or is it more contrived? There's a planning process.
Well, I think it's instinctive and thought out. I mean, over the years, I have some idea what might work. For example, if it's a shiny thing, it probably won't work in a photograph. If the forms are too complex, it probably won't work in a photograph. So, you know, there are all sorts of conscious criteria I understand in terms of my own work and in terms of what works best in the media photography that might work and might not work. So, you know, if it's just too many tones or colors, it probably won't work. So there's that conscious experiential side, and then there's the instinctive side that you're drawn to something, you really like it, it really feels interesting, and you think you could work with it further. It's no different than finding a person somewhere and saying, I like the presence of that person. You like it, but you know, it's very important, and this is where people get a little mixed up in photography. You know, if you say you found this item, you found an item in Hong Kong, or I walked around Hong Kong and I found somebody I think is interesting. Well, I've always said, like, I'm 5% there. I'm not very far. I'm not very far. You know, if I'm a normal photographer, maybe what I would do is photograph what I found, or take the person and stick them against a wall or her against a wall and take the picture. But this is not a way of creating a complex ambiguity in terms of the type of work I'm interested in. So yeah, finding these things is an important part of my process, because in photography, unlike in painting, you're dealing with the real world, physical objects. So you have to, you have to find physical things to work with, but it doesn't mean just because you've found something that you're going to get a good photograph. You might never, or it might happen 5 years later, you might do it the next day, but it's usually in combination with other events, photographic events that take place as you construct the picture spontaneously or not spontaneously.
Mm. Yeah, so if I'm interpreting it correctly, there's that process of refinement that you go through, because I know, having sort of spoken to you, often when we see your photographs, we see the singular, the final shot, but I know that you've gone for a process of, you know, taking multiples of that shot just to get an expression exactly how you perceive correct, or to see an item within that photograph turning the right, the right angle.
I like to make the analogy of it's like a painting, you know, a painting of thousands of brushstrokes. And when generally speaking, at this point in my career, it's the same sort of thing, conscious, subconscious decision. There could be thousands of steps to get there. So it's not a matter of taking a lot of photographs. That's the easy part, because then you realize some sort of culmination. But to put these objects and people and animals together that don't necessarily come together, aren't necessarily together in the so-called real world, and create something that has a coherency of meaning, well, this is the challenge, and the complexity of meaning. That's the challenge. It's putting thousands of thoughts of thousands of concepts together and refining it into a coherent whole within a split second, which is the way a camera works. 1/5 of a second of reality.
Yeah, because when you said earlier you were growing up around all this fantastic photography, and through that you gained this intelligence, visual intelligence, as you refer to as the eye. So this process that you undertake of putting all these items together and these humans and animals, that refinement process is very much what you need to go through as an artist to capture that one singular image for the audience.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily for the audience. It's something in Roger Ballen's brain says, yeah, Roger, now you have a coherent whole here, a formal coherent whole. And now, Roger, I think you have the level of meaning that you're trying to create. We're not just saying 1 + 1 is equal to 2. We're extending the realm of reality, the zone of reality through photography and taking myself and hopefully the audience into another place. And you can't just plan this out, A, B, C, D. It's a very unquantifiable relationship to the world, and that takes all sorts of levels of concentration and all sorts of parts of your mind to be able to do such a thing. And, you know, all artists, I think, can talk about this, but there's a lot about it that you can't put into words. But on the other hand, you know, it's 54 years of doing this, and this, you know, I've refined my technique and have a pretty good understanding of what I'm trying to achieve. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's obviously evident in the photography that we enjoy. Talking about how other artists work, obviously a nice segue to talk to Andrew. And Andrew and I have often spoke about you know, material and fabrication. And it's so obvious in your work that you go through a very aggressive manipulation of materials. Often these materials are never meant to be used as you intended them to be used, certainly never intended to be used as an artwork. And the fridge vitrine is a prime example of that. So I find often with your work, you're putting together items that have never intended to have this you know, destiny that you're creating for them, but also alongside, I don't like the expression ready-made, but you're putting alongside, in this instance, beside a, you know, PS2. So it'd be great to hear about, Andrew, how you put these objects together through your own process, very much to the point that Roger's speaking to.
Yeah, similar to Roger, I'd say, like, you know, you have thousands of ideas, and how do you compress them? And that's always the difficulty. And you don't necessarily, while you're making it, it doesn't necessarily make, at least to me, at least, it doesn't always make sense why things go together. It's more of a touch and feel. And then as you're working on it, you start to realize that, wait, these things really do have a sense of cohesion. With the refrigerator specifically, the refrigerator, I was drawn to it in the sense of I was thinking about what was it, Roger Smithson's understanding of a museum. He called it a mausoleum full of dead things, and I thought that was really interesting. Obviously, that was written in the 70s. Museums now have much better programs towards the public, and they're less likely to just put dead things. But in that sense, you can kind of make the association of the museum or a collection in a way as a kind of a vitrine of like just like a refrigerator. It's like full of frozen things or things that are slowly rotting. It's the cold that's keeping it together and preserving it. Sort of things waiting to die but held in some suspension. And so you know, with the refrigerator, that works in the sense that I'm also through the red lights pulling in ideas of ancestor worship and like those little what are those called? There's those little stands outside of storefronts in Hong Kong where you put your incense, and they always have a little red light in them, right? It's usually for like the door god or the earth god or the money god. And yeah, so there's sort of this veneration as well as this sense of suspending deterioration simultaneously.
And I do notice on the exterior of the fridge, I should talk about expanding foam, which I know both you and I are big fans of, both from creating your own, but obviously fridges have that insulation within it. So it must have been quite funny manipulating the ready-made expanding foam and, you know, embedding what I know is actually some of the clocks that were a point of collaboration for you both. So am I right in thinking that Roger sent over some clocks for you to interpret for your own practice, or?
Yes, Roger sent me some clocks very generously, I might add. And I was freaking out one night trying to figure out what to do with the exterior. And I happened to look at his clocks and I was like, oh, I wonder what they look like inside. And it didn't register to me at the time that maybe he wouldn't want me to open up the clocks. However, I'm very thankful that he sent them and that he's okay with that. So yeah, it's dismantled clocks along the outer edges of it. It was fun to find like ready-made spray foam, essentially.
Yeah,
it's like a material that I have so much experience with is sort of once again there for me to excavate in a sense and create that sort of that scene of like mid excavation. And having that orient back into the interior of the fridge where there's like just different navigational tools, different time orientation tools from from various cultural groups and how they understood time or cosmology or oriented their sense of self within a civilization with like as part of the earth, and how they sort of there's similarities and differences I think that make it very interesting. I didn't make this piece thinking that it's like a single statement. It's more of an investigation of through not just of the objects comparing to each other, but also through the use of using the internet to just download 3D files, like another cosmology of open source, like internet 1.0 as compared to what the internet is sort of now, where there's this it was built with the intention of sharing, and it's this great communicational device that unites us in a sense. So being able to find all these artifacts, and they're all 3D scanned artifacts, so they're on a 1-to-1 scale of the exact object that they're meant to represent. They're not carved using not by me, not by anybody else, but yeah, it's kind of strange how you're able to, you know, artifacts that exist in museums or artifacts that are literally fought over and have a sense of contention about that are like just online for free to download. And so combining them all, but and then on top of that, offering the possibility that a PlayStation 2 with Katamari Damacy, the game that's in it, could itself be another sense of another type of cosmology that I don't know if you've ever experienced, like getting sucked into a game where you play it day and night until you finish it. You sort of enter
some addictions, not gaming so much, but I think the way you're describing, I think the commonality I see between both of your practices is that every single component of the final artwork really plays a supporting role towards the holistic narrative. And I think that process of complete appreciation of all materials that will be used and that refinement process, because I've seen both of your works in more so in a museum context. I mean, certainly Roger all around the world who has had many multiple museum shows, as Andrew will be having more and more soon in the near future. But obviously when viewers go into a museum, they're consciously entering a prescribed experience. Right. But I think for the benefit of this show, and understand that all the works can obviously be purchased and they can exist at home, and I'm a really firm believer of living with art, because you can experience it throughout the entire spectrum of emotions that we all have at home, and that's not certainly the experience that you have going to a museum, especially now when many of us are spending so much time at home. Everyone has their own version of a private museum, but the thing with both of your works is that there's a lot of very highly provocative imagery in there that many people who maybe aren't so familiar with the work will find challenging. So how do you want your work to exist, not just in the museum, but within the home setting, within the domestic setting? I don't know if either of you have ever seen your work at someone's house and you've thought it's not being hung right, or it's not being presented right. Roger, I don't know if you've seen lots of your work outside of the museum in homes.
Look, as they say in South Africa, horses for courses. So, you know, a lot of people choose pictures that make them they want to choose pictures that don't necessarily challenge their state of mind. They want something that's so-called beautiful, or takes them to a world of fantasy, and maybe it's more on the decorative side. I'm not saying I produce that type of work, but you know, it's really hard to know what people's general motives are when they buy art. You know, you can ask them and you might get an answer, but it might not be the right one either. Some buy it because it's an investment, others buy it because their husband likes it, or their wife likes it, or their son likes it, or they like dogs, or they like rats, or, you know, it's really impossible to say, you know, I think. And then you have to break the market up into people who are really serious photo collectors and versus people who, you know, just buy it because of the name, or buy it because of decorative reasons. So I think it's a very complicated question, because there are aesthetic subjective choices all along. And even though they may have a real attraction to the art on various levels, it doesn't mean they can hang the thing properly. It might end up, I've seen it already, they hang the picture backwards. They don't even notice that the picture's backwards. So this question of what goes on in people's mind regarding why they buy certain art and don't buy certain art, it's, you know, it's enigmatic, and it's varies from person to person. So I'm a little bit it's very difficult to generalize.
No, I like that. Once it's left the studio, it's for the owner to you know, decide with how they present it. Andrew, how about yourself? Have you seen some, when you're confronted with your work at someone's home?
I have to agree with Roger on this. It's I don't necessarily understand why people the motivations behind why people sometimes buy certain work and not other work pieces, or what frame of mind they're in when they're making decisions about what looks good where or why. Yeah, I'm regularly surprised that people are able to live with my work. Yeah.
Is that
Although
due to?
I appreciate it a lot, but it's a little bit surprising for me.
Why do you say that? Is you think that's the subject matter, or just the aesthetic doesn't fit within a home, or what do you?
Yeah, I'd say the subject matter doesn't feel like it should fit in, like, I'm surprised that somebody would want to look at napalm while they're eating breakfast every morning. Yeah, it's just ridiculous for me, but I'm more than happy if somebody is okay with that.
Nice, I agree. Well, I was going to move, Roger, you know, I have one of yours. I was going to put it behind me, but I thought that would look very sort of a bit embarrassing. So, but I can see it's in my line of sight, and it's hung perfectly. Not that you would mind otherwise. But Vanessa, that's great. I know we're getting some questions through. You've got some as well, so I can hand it back over. But
Yeah,
thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Roger.
Thank you. We still have a bit of time, so I have my own question too, if you don't mind, and then I'll go to the chat room. Roger, can I ask you, what is your daily routine, and do you have an assistant, and do you shoot every day? How does it work being an artist like Roger Ballen?
Well, I think for the last 10, 15 years, I tend to spend the mornings in my center office and getting the business done, emails, dealing with practical matters. And most days, I think about 5 days a week, around 12:30 to 1, I go out and take pictures five days a week, maybe sometimes 6. And then that usually well, they usually last at maybe 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, not 6, but maybe 5. And it depends. Sometimes I'm lucky enough that picture works out fairly quickly, and then I might be finished at 4. And many days that didn't get it right, or it needs further work, or I'm not my concentration is not as good as I hope, and then I come back again the next day. So I usually don't work on any particular picture more than like 3 days. If it doesn't work within that confinement, then I move on to something else. But you may start with something one day. This happened this week. I started with some idea, didn't think it was going to work. I went back to the next day, and I moved in a certain direction very quickly, and I got a very good photograph. So I've been since '95, I worked with 2 female assistants. One was called Jenny. She worked with me for 10 years. And then Marguerite Rousseau has been working for me for 15 years. And so I've had 2, one female assistant for 10 years and another female assistant for 15 years. And that's the only people that come with me.
Thank you. And I would like you also to tell us a bit about your future project, and specifically the foundation you're opening this year. I know you're very busy with this as well. Can you give us a bit of a glimpse of it?
I built a museum here in Johannesburg, South Africa, called the Inside Out Center for the Arts. So it's a museum here that focuses on a few concepts. One, the pictures, the exhibitions have something to do with Africa directly or indirectly. Secondly, the imagery and the impact should be psychological. 3, there should be some interest in the exhibition for people who have sophisticated understanding of art to somebody who's never been in a museum or gallery in their whole life. And it should also have something to do with the so-called Ballen-esque, my own aesthetic. And so these are all issues that are important in what we're trying to do here. The opening hopefully will be in the next few months, and the opening concept is dealing with the destruction of the African wildlife, firstly during the time of the last century, around 1900. So it's partly documentary, and it goes through a story of what happened in Africa about 1900, and then the rest of the exhibition is my exhibition, and it deals with a more absurdistic, complex visual viewpoint of this, which is harder to necessarily explain within a particular time period. And so it's very exciting to do this, and I'm really enthusiastic about it. It's a really, I think it'll be an exciting thing for people who come to the center and view the exhibition, because I already have had people here already, and they immediately respond to what's there. And that's always a very singular criteria of what I do in art, that it has to be like a flash in the back of the mind before they can even blink.
Where is this, Roger? Is this Maboneng?
It never goes away. Huh?
Whereabouts is it? In Maboneng?
I'm sorry?
Whereabouts is the...
It's I don't know if people, where the zoo is. It's 1 kilometer, more or less, towards town on Jan Smuts Avenue, 48 Jan Smuts Avenue, Forest Town, in Johannesburg. So it's very, very convenient location between the city itself and the suburbs here.
Well, I certainly want to visit. I'm sure you got many, many visitors. Thank you. And also a practical question that I would like to ask to Andrew about the fridge, because it's not obvious. Why did you use a ready-made fridge for the theme ZODIAC? And also, why did you use 3D printing? Maybe you can...
The fridge was more or less, as I mentioned, it's sort of the idea of a mausoleum of sorts, and then also an idea of the notion of containment. I was really drawn by when I was in a residency last summer in London. I was really drawn to all these like little private museums that people had. Some of them were just just random things from Egypt, or like with the emphasis on beads, or something that doesn't quite, it's not as spectacular as like a a public museum, but it's the private museums that you see, like the personal touch with the handmade labels and these vitrines that have lasted hundreds of years, and the artifacts inside become not they're not so much the showstopper of this little museum, but they're part of the fabric of the museum itself, and everything seems to go together much more naturally. I think because somebody, like a singular person, took the care to really arrange and prepare everything, and it's not like it's not a professional level archive, and it doesn't have that sort of aura around it, or it's just sort of like one person's personal choices and thoughts, and you really get a portrait of that out of it. And I wanted to capture a sense of that with the interior of the refrigerator.
But did you preconceive the fact that it would be foam? You knew it, or it came with the process? Is that something you already, you knew it? Or for me, it was a discovery, I didn't even know there was this kind of material inside a fridge.
No, I was frustrated with the refrigerator, so I cut it open, and then I discovered the foam.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that was by accident.
Okay, well, that's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And do you want to talk to us about your future project? I know you're extremely busy as well, and this thing we're not supposed to say, I guess, but some of them you can tell about your future.
Yeah, I've started on a online residency with Videotage called Leave Your Body. It's based in Minecraft, so I'm supposed to prepare a Minecraft-based artwork as part of that residency, and simultaneously I'm working with a website called Vital Capacities to log the process of making this artwork into their blog. Vital Capacities is by a England-based group called Video Club. Yeah.
Cool, sounds very cool. I have some questions. I'll start chronologically to Roger. Roger Ballen, someone is asking, could you tell us which photo shoot you found difficult to do and why?
Well, look, it's never easy. This is the thing is if something goes really well, that's an exception. When you do things quickly, it happens immediately, spontaneously. So I can't, I've been doing this, as I said earlier, for 54 years now. So it's very difficult for me to say which was more difficult than another. I've always said that the most difficult thing in my career, other than sitting in airplanes for 10 or 15 hours, is taking the pictures. That's the hardest part. This is easy talking now. It's easy showing. But they go out and, it's like a painter or anything, or a poet or whatever. Every time you start with a blank wall, basically, what am I going to do? And whether it's walking around a street, or whether it's going into somebody's house or going into a studio, whatever you do, you're starting with nothing. And then you've got to create at least in the last 15, 20, 30 years of what I'm doing, a complex message. And, it's never easy. It's never easy. And some days you're lucky, as I said, it happens sort of more smoothly. It's like I always talk about going through a city with the traffic lights. Some days you go through all the lights, green, 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 green. And other days, you think you're doing well, you got a green light, and all of a sudden it goes yellow, and then you're hitting red light, red light, red light. Uh-oh, I'm never going to get there today on time. That's a good analogy.
Thanks. And I have a question for Andrew. How do you consider computer games in your work? That's a question, considering the refrigerator of cosmologies.
So when I use any kind of what's considered new media, I'm always I'm using things from the past. I never try to at no point do I try to find something actually futuristic or so my approach to new media is always a almost archival or like historical in a sense. So my approach to video games is very much the same way. It's never the newest thing. It's always something that has existed culturally for a long time, and I'm just really kind of appropriating it into another piece or adjusting it into a different framework.
That's cool. There's something I'd like you to do. Do you have any question to ask to Roger? And Roger, do you have any question to ask to Andrew as well? I wanted that kind of cross. Okay, Andrew has one. Go for it.
Roger, I wanted to ask, how do you take photographs of animals? I imagine that's like very complicated. I have tried to film animals before, and I think I'm just bad at it.
You know, the thing is, I spent years learning rat language. Then I went on to learn, I learned 100 bird languages. I'm just teasing. Anyway, look, the thing is nothing's ever easy. So if you're going to work with an animal, then I guess, you know, with the confines of what you're doing, you have to place the animal in the space that you're working with. And so sometimes it's the last thing in the work. In photography, they're a lot different than what you're doing, because in photography, you're trying to get this instant. And what you're doing is more permanent. It's like it's a sculpture there. So you're not trying to, you can't like stick an animal there because the animal's walking around and it might walk out of the door. But all I'm trying to do is get this one shot, then the job's finished. But you don't have the same, you have a different problem, because it's like a difference between a film and a photograph. It's a more of a longevity relationship between the art and the environment, whereas mine's instantaneous. So I'm always looking for that instantaneous moment. And, you know, you'd stick the animal here and you hope just out of fortune that, you know, the bird flies at the right time, or the dog bites somebody on their foot, or the rat, you know, puts his head out and bites the cat on the nose. So, you know, so you're looking for these moments, but the moments have to occur within the constraints of the other things in the photograph, because there's no point just taking a picture of the rat biting the nose of the cat. That's a sort of a documentary type of photograph. It doesn't have any real complexity to it. So you have to create the world around it, then perhaps try to bring in the animal one way or another. And sometimes you find that moment, and other times it doesn't happen. And usually what happens is totally unexpected. That's, again, what's interesting in photography. You know, that's why I never plan the picture. I can't tell you before I get to until it happens that the rat's going to bite the cat's nose. I can't predict that. I don't even conceptualize it. It's just a thing that happens, and it may happen in the wrong part of the picture, and then it doesn't work. So there's all these layers that you have to work through, and sometimes it really works well and creates the tension in the picture you want, and sometimes it just doesn't work.
Thank you. I'm just sorry. There is. Do you have a question, Roger, to Andrew? Otherwise, there's another question. If you want a bit more time, or if you want to go ahead with a question to Andrew.
I was wondering, Andrew, because you mentioned photography on occasion. I mean, what do you see in terms of your art career as the deficiency in photography over installation making, or vice versa? Do you have any interest in trying to link photography to what you're doing as an aesthetic, or do you feel it's not really meant for you? I mean, for example, if somebody asked me if I wanted to be a musician, I would say it's not meant for me. I don't have a very good ear. Forget it, Roger. You just forget it. That's for your next life. I don't have.
Can you sing a little, please? The Andrew, please.
But I wasn't singing.
I think one day. Sorry, Andrew.
Yeah, when I make large installations, there is something kind of cinematic or stage. There's a stage quality to it, and I completely understand. Yeah, I realize that, and I go in thinking about that. However, yeah, I've never really thought about photography as a medium. It's not that I don't like photography or that I don't enjoy it. I actually really enjoy it. the thing that always throws me off is the proliferation of photography.
That is a problem. It is a problem.
Yeah, and that kind of bugs me. Yeah.
I have a good question for the both of you, actually, from the chat. Someone is asking, when you feel like you've hit the roadblock in your work, what do you do to reset your thoughts and find fresh ideas? So yeah, this is quite a good, yeah. Who wants to answer? Roger, what do you do when you hit a roadblock? How do you reset? How do you refresh yourself?
It's like every day you hit roadblocks, but you have to figure a way around them. And if you just give up, then that's a hopeless attitude. So you just got to come back the next day and start again. That's all. I mean, it's like you can't. There's no questions asking. Oh, I don't have a state of mind. Oh, I'm quitting, or I can't do it. It just it's not working this day. I'll be back tomorrow. That's it. So there's no issue of permanent roadblocks. You just have to get around them. This is part of this, part of life. It's part of being an artist. It's part of almost doing anything. So you just got to be there and keep at it and have the confidence to keep pursuing what you're trying to do. And if you have the capability, you'll get over the roadblock and you'll hit a freeway again or a highway again. You go fast, but you with the full knowledge that the roadblock's coming up again.
Thank you. Andrew, what's your solution?
Yeah, you just keep showing up every day. And
yeah, no other solution. There's no other solution.
Well, it's good. It's a good, it's inspirational, actually. I think it's good. Maybe some young artists are following the talk. It's good. Damian, do you want to add anything? You good?
Maybe just a continuation to that point. I think a lot of the questions you could probably see what I was alluding to is that a lot of people who either don't consider themselves creative or haven't got friends who are artists don't appreciate the extreme measures that artists go to create that artwork. Because we can look at something, it doesn't, no one tells you how long to look at a photograph or a sculpture. It's not like reading a book where people think, oh, I'll be back in 2 weeks and I'll tell you what I think of it. This is, you can look at it as quickly or as long as you like. And I think it's always good for people to acknowledge that Roger's work, it isn't just I took a picture and I moved on. There's a whole infrastructure and process, and it's intrinsic, but it's also arbitrary, and it's using nature, and and I think that's such a really important point for people to be aware of, that when you own that in your home, you're living with that. It's something that's been captured. And I do love the idea of it's a torturous being to be a sort of a real artist, that there is no, you don't just go for a run and reset, you just keep coming back every single day. And that's why not everyone can do it. I went to art school and I realized I couldn't do it. So I appreciate both of everything that they do and as they've articulated today.
Well said. Yeah, I also share actually this, because with the two of you, Roger and Andrew, the work you produce is growing on you, and I experienced it, and I'm obviously a fan of both of your work, and I feel like day after day I discover things like layers, and it's deep, it's the contrary of a Hollywood movie. I have nothing against Hollywood movies, but it's like you feel there's your soul in it, and it's something that really makes your life, better in a sense. And collecting one of your work is the better, the best thing that I can suggest people to do, really, because I experienced it myself, and it's like a pure thing. Any other question from the chat? What time is it? Okay, we have 6 more minutes. Roger, do you want to say something to the Hong Kong people, or anything about anything you want to add before we start, before we close and open tomorrow to the public?
Well, the only thing I can add is that you did a great job. It's been a pleasure working with Andrew. I'm so excited that I've been able to work on this exhibition with both of you, and just my only, I just have 2 things to say. Thank you very much. to both of you. And also, I hope people listening can visit the exhibition and also tell their friends and family to go also. And I'm sure you as visitors can also help make this a big success.
Thank you, Roger. It's a good transition because tomorrow, Saturday, we open from 12 to 6. And we're going to be part of the Stay Home Safe edition with the Hong Kong Art Gallery Association. Thank you very much to the Hong Kong Art Gallery Association who's helping us promoting online with, virtual kits. So please just send us an email if you want to visit. So we do appointment only. And we will be doing a virtual tour at 2 p.m. tomorrow, Saturday. So you can log in. If you don't know the link, just email us and we will give it to you. Thank you so much for being here with us. It's a great pleasure. Thank you. I think we did really well. I want to clap everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Damian.
Stay healthy.
Sorry?
Stay healthy.
Stay healthy, yes.
We'll try.
Soon we'll fly to you.
Thank you again.
We
Be
will.
well. Have a nice evening. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a lot of thank you from the chat, actually. Yeah. Thanks. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
We can go and have a real drink. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Good night. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, Damian.